Welcome to the RHE Global podcast. This is our
Thank you.
first podcast, and I'm Jim Nixon. I'm the product owner of the Noise app here at RHE Global. And today I'm joined by a very special guest, Harvey Saimbhi, the CEO of ASB Help. ASB Help is a national charity focused on improving the support available to victims of antisocial behaviour and also a lot of help to practitioners as well. And Harvey has been leading the organisation's work at a really pivotal time for me in the ASB sector. Harvey, thank you so much for agreeing to come on today.
Thank you for inviting me, Jim.
It's really good to see you again. I know we kind of go back a while, so we sort of help each other out from time to time. So it's brilliant to have you on as my first guest.
Lovely.
Just
Thank
to
you.
kick it off, Harvey, I just want to know a little bit about you, really, in terms of how did you get involved in this sector? What made you make that crazy decision?
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? In terms of working in the field of antisocial behavior, kind of goes back a very long time in terms of my career. I've had 34 years of working in a local authority, and I would say fundamentally my background is very much housing, social housing, community safety, and antisocial behavior, of course, hate crime. And having sort of worked in that field for a number of years, came to about 34, and I was able to take early retirement. So I thought, absolutely going to take this opportunity and do something different. And I think similar to your experiences that we do that, we think we're going to go off and do something totally different. But I very quickly realized that actually find working in the field of antisocial behavior, community safety, that you can really make a big difference. You can really help those individuals that are experiencing antisocial behavior. And when you have a wealth of experience, you can really help and improve those individuals' lives. So that's kind of where I was really making that massive decision to leave the local authority, and then realizing that antisocial behavior is my forte. And then I was very fortunate that there was a vacancy in the charity ASB Help. And believe it or not, I've been there for 4 years as the CEO.
Wow, that's gone so quick.
So quick. I think one of the key components really of why I was drawn to the charity was how the kind of the fundamental ethos really, and more aligned to the founder, Julian Richer. At the time, we all know Fiona Pilkington and the devastating end to both their lives, her and her daughter, Francesca.
Yeah.
And when Julian, read her story in the paper, he said it really impacted on him. And what he did was to research back in 2013 to see what there was available for victims of antisocial behaviour. And he clearly found that there was a gap in terms of advice and support. I think that's where the journey of the ASB Help kind of really sort of started to establish its platform really, in terms of initially the website, to really give victims some advice, somewhere to go to. It's also on those principles. I felt very, very aligned, and felt that I had a number of years of experience and ideas to really work in the field and fundamentally make a real difference to those experiencing antisocial behaviour.
Yeah, it's a brilliant charity. I think Julian Richer is someone I've got a lot of respect for, and I think he's done some amazing work, and the work you guys are doing on a day-to-day basis is fantastic. Tell me a little bit more about that work. What's a typical day for you and your team? What sort of stuff are you actually getting into, and how are you making those differences to people's lives?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really starts off with the initial contact from the victim, telling us about their story, telling us how the antisocial behaviour is impacting on them and their families, and then just sort of stepping back to really look at their journey, and then realizing that there's a lot more that is available for them, and they don't know about it, they've not had the right service, they've not known who to report antisocial behaviour to, and what kind of service that they may receive. So fundamentally, our core is the victim. We go where the victim takes us. And on the back of that, obviously working with the practitioners is key, because we know that's where the solutions lie. And we get a range of practitioners that have lots of experience in the field of antisocial behaviour, those that are just setting out in terms of getting involved in the field of antisocial behaviour. And you and I know that there isn't that kind of magic training course or a qualification of how you might deal with antisocial behaviour. So it's very much often self-taught. So that kind of relationship with the practitioners is really important. And I think fundamentally, in terms of what we do, is we work with key partners like the government, like the Victims Commissioner, and other bodies, just to ensure that we take the voice of the victim into those policies, into legislation, into any field that's going to work with the victim. So it's about lobbying their rights, telling about what victims are telling us, so that we ensure that those policy and procedures that are being developed through the centre, through the government, are listening to the views of victims. So that's something that we really sort of strongly try to promote through any audience or relationships or policy and procedures or governing bodies, is something that we're really key area for us. In terms of, again, understanding the national picture in terms of antisocial behaviour, that's a difficult one for all of us. As you know, there isn't a central recording base in terms of looking at what the prevalence of antisocial behaviour is nationally. So that's something that we are really keen to work with the government and other partners to really determine that. So we put a lot of emphasis in terms of understanding the national picture. For us, the ASB case review is a key priority. We know that since the ASB Crime and Policing Act 2014 came into play, that's almost 11 years ago, and when we speak to victims, when they call us and they tell us about the issues that they're experiencing, and when you ask the question to them around, have you heard about the ASB case review? It's, well, no, what's that? So that baffles me to this day. And again, we know many of the reasons why that's not accessible, and we'll probably touch on that later.
Yeah, we will, yeah.
But really, for us, in terms of the ASB case review, in terms of the importance of that, and 11 years on, victims aren't aware of it, and sadly also practitioners aren't aware of the tool or exactly how it works. So on the back of that, in order to make some long-lasting change, is that we want to ensure that we can get as many areas signed up to the ASB pledge, and that is very much around improving the ASB case review processes and procedures, and it's about promoting antisocial behaviour. Case review, it's about making sure policy and procedures are in place, that the victim's informed, that is promoted. So for us, if I was to say, if there's one thing that the ASB Help charity has achieved, is the ASB, people know about the ASB case review. Case management is at the highest level. And in how do I know that? If we can get people to sign up to the pledge, we know that those individuals working in the field and those that have signed up to the pledge are working. We're working within good practice.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I love the fact that you've got that influence with government as well, because it's such a specialist area, ASB and social behaviour.
Yeah.
You need people like you on board, and your team to be able to influence that. It's great that you have that ability to be able to influence government and to try and shape the way that we're moving forward, because like you said, there's a lot of work to do. Victims are still being let down. Despite
Absolutely.
all the great work that you're doing, there's still an awful long way to go, isn't there, Harvey, I think?
Yeah, there is absolutely lots of work to be done. And you'll know in the work that you feel that you're in, and myself and other practitioners. And, training and raising awareness is such a key element. And that's something that we, push forward to the government, is that it's great having policy and procedures and legislation, but it needs to be embedded. Individuals need to know how to use it. People need to be trained so that, when they hit the ground and come face to face with the victim, that they are confident in what they know and what tools and powers that are available to tackle antisocial behaviour. So from the training, we know that there is a gap in understanding. There is a whole issue about infrastructure. It's about, you'd have your frontline practitioner who may know everything there is to know about the ASB tools and powers, but the infrastructure and the processes that sit above them are not as easy to go through those routes, because they may not have legal services. Affordability and costs come into play. So, I do feel for those frontline practitioners where sometimes the process and procedures and financial constraints stand in the way of getting a resolution for victims of antisocial behaviour.
It's a big challenge. It really is a challenge, and I think it's one that you guys will continue to sort of fight for. And I just wanted to touch on training. I think one of the things that I've experienced, as you know, we've done a lot of training and within the field, and it's great when you do, say, a course like the ASB Case Management Principles, say, for example, or the tools and powers. But I do think there's a definite gap in terms of that refresher training too. I think that it's great to sort of, spend a day with practitioners and give them as many tools and knowledge that you've got as a training professional. But
Yeah.
I do feel that people forget very quickly, and I think that constant sort of reviewing of what they're doing, and like you say, around procedures, is so
Yeah.
important to me.
Absolutely. And I know when I first got my role as a housing officer, and I was petrified when I got my first antisocial behaviour case. I'm talking about the ASBO days, and
Oh yeah,
and yes, you've got the hard end of persistent antisocial behaviour, but in terms, I didn't get no training. I was just you're a housing officer. Go out there and investigate antisocial behaviours. So I think, as you said, it's refresher training is very, very important. And the landscape changes. We know now that the crime and policing bill will bring new legislation to the table. So
yeah,
it's very much about ensuring that we keep on top of it. And I would say, in terms of training, when we have delivered training around tools and powers, and one of the most compounding or most positive feedback we get is around the ASB case review. Right. We didn't know that. So you mean I can raise an ASB case review if I have got an egg case and, 3 incidents in 6 months, that's the threshold. So I can do that. And it's like a bit of a light bulb moment. And I also often think that those frontline practitioners, when they have got those hard cases where resolution can't easily be found, or partners aren't always around the table, and there's that really great harm and put on the victim, that is the classic place to take a case to. So yeah, I think there's a lot that can be trained, that can be achieved through training. So yeah, I think all practitioners work in the field delivering training. I think we've definitely got our work cut out to ensure that we really impart our knowledge and get people to really see the benefits of what the legislation can offer.
yeah. I think the other thing for me as well is I've been talking to a few practitioners about caseloads,
Mm,
and what seems to come through at the moment, like when I was an ASB manager, I would try my utmost to try and keep the kind of the numbers to about 30. Now I know that's not always
mm,
easy, because how long's a piece of string with certain
yeah.
cases, but I do think this links back into training. That what the feedback I'm getting is some practitioners are like managing 70 plus cases, and that really frightens me.
Absolutely true. This is it in terms of when you've got large workload. Where you've got specialist ASB services, they deal with antisocial behaviour, and they may go through the process. They might be fully trained. They may be working in a joint co-located multi-agency framework. And then you've got housing officers that will have rent arrears to deal with, housing repairs, other issues that go on in sort of social housing estates and so forth. So, and then they've got an ASB case as well. So then it's like prioritizing those cases as well, and workload is a major issue around communication. How can it's about ensuring that the individual with a large workload makes that time to ensure that the victim of antisocial behaviour knows what's going to happen now that we've reported the incident of antisocial behaviour. So communication right at the beginning, in the middle, and the end, and that regular contact. It makes it difficult, for somebody who has got a large workload. I think this is where, coming from a management perspective, it's the importance, isn't it, in terms of looking at the cases, reviewing, looking
Yeah,
at the kind of the risk, the harm,
so key.
and prioritizing those cases where there is a massive element of harm and vulnerability is
Yeah.
key.
I think the other area for me as well is yeah, I think you've already touched upon it, but you mentioned some of the barriers within your own organisations, and I think when I've sort
Yeah.
of done policy reviews, as I'm sure you have, sometimes you can see that it's great to have an all singing, all dancing policy review, but I
Yeah.
always try and think about the perspective of the practitioner. Yes, we've got to
Yeah.
put the victim at the forefront of all of that policy work, but I
Yeah.
think sometimes, a policy can work massively against the practitioner if it's too robust, in terms of the best ASB officer in the world is probably
Yeah.
never going to hit all of those points on that policy.
Absolutely, you're right. And, supporting victims of antisocial, behaviour is a complex and deeply important responsibility. I know when I used to have some of those cases and hearing some of those stories and going home on an evening and sit there worrying about what's going to
Yeah,
happen and hope they're all right when I
that is
contact
so
them the
true.
next day. And you can't underestimate. And sometimes I think that, you know, you can sometimes not overlook, but just think it's standard. You're an ASB officer and you're going to deal with those cases. You're going to, you know what the process and procedures are, and you're going to work within that. I've had officers that have come back from visits where they've literally sat and cried and
Yeah,
saying that how can those individuals live in those circumstances, and it's deeply impacted on them. And so I think there is that kind of whole responsibility in that not only do we look after victims, but we also have that real responsibility for those people investigating antisocial behaviour, so they're looked after as well. It can have a devastating impact on them listening to stories and seeing the impact the antisocial behaviours are having on them, and sometimes they've only got limited tools to help them. So I think that's just very much around ensuring that there is sufficient support and talking through cases, because every case is different.
yeah, it is.
So I totally agree with you around workload, the impact on individuals, and we know that ASB is in the eye of the beholder. We know mental health plays a massive key role,
Huge.
in cases which aren't a quick fix. Although, I would say that those cases that are dealt with quickly, you'd get over 70% of cases might be resolved through good case management, dealt with quickly, resolutions brought to the table, sometimes mediation, sometimes it's the hard word around unacceptable behaviour, and sometimes it crosses the kind of crime versus ASB in terms of deciding which route cases will be taken. But fundamentally, they can run alongside each other. It's not criminal or it's not ASB. Sometimes they are so complex you can't separate the two.
Yeah.
So I think there is that real issue around keeping that motivation, keeping the keep going really, in terms of supporting the victim, but also seeking that support for yourself.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Talking about victims, obviously one of the motivations for starting this podcast was the ASB Awareness Week, which obviously
Yeah.
starts on the 30th of June. What's it all about, and what have ASB Help got sort of planned for the week?
Yeah. Okay. So I think over the years, the ASB Case, ASB Awareness Week has really taken a really positive perspective. Really,
Yeah,
it's a
it's really gone massive now, hasn't it?
it's massive. I
Yeah,
remember going back while I was working for the local authority. It was the ASB Awareness Week, and we'd do a few little things at the
yeah,
time. But I think that Resolve leading it has really taken it to the level of you've got buy-in from the government. You've got ministers engaging, and we've got all various areas really showcasing what they do in the field of antisocial behaviour. And it's for me, it's kind of sitting back and really feeling quite proud that nationally there's so much good practice, there's so much that we do for victims of
yeah,
antisocial behaviour, but at the same time there's so much we still need to do. And really, in terms of the activities that people undertake during those weeks, and victims stories that come through as well, during those weeks, and how youth work, youth services get involved. So yeah, I really think that it's a really great week. I would say that ASB is not just the ASB Awareness Week; it should be forever, and that's why we have the ASB Awareness Week, just to showcase that,
I
right?
was just going to touch on that because you sometimes see some negative comments, like from practitioners as well as members of the public. Who'll say, "Oh,
Yeah,
ASB Awareness Week, it should be every day." Well, of course it is, but I think
yeah,
what we're trying to say is we're just raising that awareness for a week and just making people
yeah,
aware that we're not forgetting about it. We're all
yeah,
working really hard to try and
yeah,
tackle,
yeah,
and it's good just to sort of showcase the great work that's going
yeah,
on. But I have no doubt this is going on 24/7,
yeah,
365 days a year, and I
yeah.
think sometimes people are quite quick to knock, but I do think it's great to raise that
Yeah,
awareness as well.
yeah, absolutely. It's instrumental in spotlighting antisocial behaviours. It's encouraging national activity and debate, people thinking outside of the box, people sharing good practice and debates. And I think one of the key things is around the YouGov survey that's produced every year, and it really does highlight what victims say about antisocial behaviour and how confident that they feel about reporting antisocial behaviour, or not reporting antisocial behaviour, and how many people know about the ASB case review. And it's good to see over the years there's been a change in terms of how many people know about the ASB case review. So I think that it can help those data can really help benchmark individuals to see what the situation is locally in terms of, I think, the various media platforms are used to really promote the week. So yeah, I'm really behind it, and I think that it's a great opportunity. So for us, we are getting a lot of requests, to actually get people to sign up to the pledge during that week. We've got training requests that have come through. We have a lot of victims focus, a group that we've got. So there's a lot of conversation going on there. And one of the key things that we really want to launch during the week is the practitioner's guide.
Yeah, I saw
Really,
that.
so it's really around. It's really created to empower practitioners and how they communicate with victims and the conversations that they have, and it's very much to build that kind of trust and resilience. And sometimes it's not, there's sometimes you'll hear conversations that it's just antisocial behaviour just is an issue
Just.
that I have a problem, really. So I think it's really that really that the guidance is very much to kind of open that sort of a supportive dialogue and really validate individuals' experiences, listening to what they're saying by engaging with them. So it's what already happens. It's just a way of a reference guide, just to kind of
Yeah.
read, and just to kind of a bit of a toolkit. It's not scriptive. It's just every individual should have and has an individual style of when they speak to victims. So it's just around a tool that hopefully will really ensure that victims are heard and helped.
I think it comes back to what I was saying earlier about that sort of that refresher. To
Yeah,
have a
it's a
document,
yeah,
a document like
yeah,
that. Yes, you might
absolutely.
want to attend regular refresher training. We all know
Yeah,
that isn't always practical, but to have a document like that you
yeah,
can just refer to, and it gives you
yeah,
a guide.
yeah.
That's for me is a brilliant step in the right direction.
Yeah, and we really want, and that's why we've tried to work with all the key practitioners, nationally, to just to sort of have a voice, provide a quote, see what they think, just so that, it's seen as a really a supportive document, particularly for new individuals that are
Yeah,
starting their journey in the field of, work in the field of antisocial behaviour. Hopefully,
daunting,
it'll
a
help. Yeah, daunting.
daunting process.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like you
And I
said
would,
earlier
yeah,
when you
yeah.
first started.
Yeah, absolutely daunting. And even to this day, I remember my first case, in terms of antisocial behaviour, and realizing the impact and the harm
Mm.
that caused those individuals. So yeah, so I think
That sounds
it's going to,
exciting.
yeah, absolutely exciting. So yeah, so we've got lots going on, and excited, for the week, and hopefully there'll be lots of things that will happen and up and above that. So again, we're really going to push the ASB pledge as well. So
Brilliant.
we want to really land
Well, that
those
moves
kind of
really
things.
nicely. I know you've touched on it already during this interview around the ASB case review, but
Yeah.
I really wanted to sort of just spend, before we wrap the interview up, just to spend a little bit of time around it again. Something
Mm.
I'm really passionate about, and sort of have been sort of raising awareness as much as I can.
Yeah.
Can you just sort of, like, for someone who's maybe listening and doesn't really understand how it works, what used to be called the ASB Community Trigger,
It was, yeah.
but it's out now, obviously being rebranded as the ASB Case Review. How does it work in general?
Okay. So the ASB case review basically gives the victims a statutory right to raise an ASB case review if they meet the local threshold. Now, we know that nationally the local threshold is 3 incidents in the last 6 months. So it's fundamentally a process where it enables agencies to really come together to review the case that's in front of them, to agree a joined up problem solving approach to get the best outcome for that victim. And for me, fundamentally, the beauty, if you like, of this tool is it enables the victim to attend those meetings if they wish to, because not every
Yeah.
victim will want to sit around the table, but for them to really talk about the impact, the harm it's causing them and their families. And having chaired some of those meetings, like you will have done,
Yes.
you know that victim's voice it's much more powerful
Oh, massive.
than reading a document about their experiences. And I've seen the shift in the room. I've seen practitioners feeling quite emotional having heard what the victim
Yeah.
has told them. So it really does. I think that's the key nugget. And sadly, some victims are not invited to some of those meetings. So I think there's opportunities to make that good in legislation that will come forward. But again, a lot of people fear it, thinking that, okay, it's my case, and I've done it before. I work in the field when somebody's raised a community trigger at that time, ASB case review, thinking, "Oh my God, what have I done wrong? What
Yeah.
haven't I done?" But I've done my best. I've been in touch with them, communicated to them. I've done everything I possibly can. But that's okay. That's great. But the fact of the matter is that if your case ends up in an ASB case review, look at it as a positive stance, because what you're going to get from that process is you're going to get key partners, all relevant to that situation and that case, and they're going to look to review what's gone on. And if certain action wasn't taken at that time, that's okay, because it might not have been relevant at that time. But it's
Absolutely.
about so it's about very much about saying, we've got this case, and what more can we do? And sometimes most simplest solutions come from that make a major difference. So sometimes it's communication, sometimes the tools and powers could have been used but haven't been used, but you go away with an action that you might do. And just in terms of changing the mind frame and actually bringing some reluctant partners around the table as well.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the ASB case review shouldn't be seen as fault finding. It should be around the fact that, okay, we are where we are, and what we're now going to do as we go forward to resolve the situation for that individual. So I would just say that, look on your council system to see how to report and how to raise an ASB case review. Tell your victims who may have who may benefit from that. Let them make the decision around whether they think that the ASB case review would help them. It would certainly help you as an individual if you're investigating an ASB case review case and you feel that it needs more support and more help. And you're only going to, I think, win from that process. And you know what? Sometimes I have seen ASB case review cases where everything's been done. Partners have worked fantastically well. All the actions have been taken, and the decision at that time will be, everything's in line, and continue with the investigation. And a lot of the times there are actions that come through those ASB case reviews, and for the victim, they feel that they've been heard, and they are hopeful that the actions that come from that ASB case review will make that difference to resolve some of those ASBs or better manage it.
Just a couple of points I wanted to raise. You mentioned about the 3 complaints. I'm right in saying, aren't I, that those kind of complaints can be to lots of different organisations? Because I've seen some sort of practice in the past where it's good, oh, you haven't reported 3 incidents to the police, or you haven't reported 3. It can be a mixture, can't it?
It can be a mixture. Police, local authority, housing provider,
Absolutely.
those are the people that you would go to and report. Absolutely. And I also think that, the victims commissioner that's still living a nightmare report she's produced, our report that around the FOI report that we produced, let's face it, nationally there is inconsistency on how the ASB case review is implemented. And so, we really are pushing forward in terms of the crime and policing bill, and I know the victims commissioner, just to ensure that that we raise the awareness of the ASB case review. Victims know what their rights are, and because what we did find was the fact that about 44% of areas didn't invite the victim to the ASB case review.
Yeah.
Some are still doing desktop reviews around some of the ASB case reviews. I'm not sure how that they work, the link with the victim in particular. And some have introduced additional caveats, like your case has to be closed, or if you've raised a complaint, you can't raise an ASB case review. So what we're really hoping, and some of the work that we do with the pledge, is to ensure that we make it as easy as possible for the victim to raise an ASB case review.
Brilliant.
And I think it's fundamental that we have a single point of contact, because that is going to be the key person that is going to support the victim go through the threshold, ask them whether they wish to attend, or whether they wish to do a victim impact statement, or get somebody else to advocate on their behalf. They're going to ensure that they've met the 3 and 6 incidences, and they're going to be able to get all the relevant information and guide the victim to say, you're going into this ASB case review, but all the information is available. All you need to do is talk about the impact that the ASB case reviews had on you. So they're not feeling that they have to tell the whole story. So they are guided from the time that they've raised the ASB case review, or they can be told that actually the ASB case, you don't meet the criteria, but what we will do is we'll ensure it goes back to the local relevant authorities to do a review and take that forward and work with you on that. So, and again, on the other side, the single point of contact will help the chair to get all the partners around the table, to get all the paperwork sorted, to get the dates sorted, manage all the risk assessments, all the information that partners need, and from that process to help develop the action plan. Again, then go back and communicate to the victim to say, this is what the actions are and this is where we go forward. So I think that it's great, and I think the crime and policing bill, in terms of the appeal process, we know what we found in our FI report as well, that there are different appeal processes. So it'll be interesting to see whether the OPCC or the community safety partnerships, to see how those appeals might work. And again, I would just say we need consistency, because for victims, it's such a vital statutory provision that they have, and it's a postcode lottery for them. It needs to be consistent.
I couldn't agree more. I've done a few, as you know, independent, and I have a certain way that I like to do the review, and it's really difficult sometimes to actually get the organisations to actually see your way of thinking. And sometimes, I'll be honest with you, there's been times where I'm still the independent chair and I'm getting the best out of everybody to, get a successful outcome and some great recommendations. But you're absolutely right that the difference in different areas in terms of how the reviews are conducted is just is amazing to me. One of the things that I found really, really useful, and I think you'll probably agree with this, is that I do think an independent chair is really, really key where it's possible. I'm not saying it's always possible, but I think an independent chair. And one of the things that I always do when I independent chair is I contact the victims before and do that, explain how it all works. And like you just said, Harvey, around the, don't spend time telling us about the case. Tell us about the impact. And then the other thing I always do is, once we've agreed the actions moving forward, I always contact the victim or victims after that as the independent chair, run through those and give our rationale, I suppose, for why we've come to those decisions before they get the letter.
That's fantastic.
And I think that works quite well.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with the independent chair, because often what victims will tell us, or those that have been to the ASB case review will come back to us, and they will say that the agencies were marking their own homework. I had the same, officer sat on the table, the same manager. So I've already had those discussions with them, and why am I sat through the process and telling them everything that they already know? So I think that kind of independent chair, fresh pair of eyes, fresh perspective.
100%.
And sometimes those solutions, which, sometimes when you're dealing with cases of antisocial behaviour, you can't see the wood for the trees, and you just need someone to look in and say, have you tried this? Have you tried this solution? Or communication.
I've had a few like that, where everybody's kind of like pulling the hair out, and I've come along as an independent and I've kind of listened to everybody's views, and then I've got, okay, I've listened to everybody, this is what I think. And everyone kind of goes, oh yeah, we didn't think about that. And I'm not saying I've got all the answers, because I haven't, none of us have, but I think you're right, those fresh pair of eyes, because you get so engrossed in the case. Sometimes you just need that fresh pair of eyes, a different thought process to come over and say, have you thought about this?
Absolutely. Spot on. Yeah. So, I just think that's a really useful tool. And I would say it's absolutely fundamental for frontline practitioners to know about it. Police officers, if you think about response officers going potentially to the same property again and again and again. And can you imagine the victim saying, well, you were here last week, you were here now, different officer came and I'm still experiencing antisocial behaviour. Right. Have you heard about the ASB case review?
I think that's
direct them to it. Yeah. So I think that as we see in terms of legislation, I think there will be some changes, some tweaks, hopefully making that process a bit more stronger. And obviously the ASB statutory guidance, hoping that those will be updated to really include some of the strong elements and things that we've touched on as well, to make it a really vital tool for frontline practitioners.
Oh, that's brilliant. Just before I let you go, you mentioned earlier about the pledge. I personally got involved in that when I was a local authority operational lead for ASB. Can't recommend it highly enough. If an organisation is listening to this today and kind of, I really like the idea of that, I think we need to do that. How can they get involved, and what would the process be for them to sort of start the ball rolling?
Brilliant and good question. Yeah, so if you're interested, anyone's interested in terms of the ASB Case Review Pledge, all you need to do is contact us. So what will happen throughout the process is that obviously the fundamental element of the pledge is a commitment by organisations to working within the best practice remit in terms of handling ASB case review cases. And it basically entails, we'll go through key elements really in terms of the pledge, in terms of how do you promote awareness, how do you raise awareness about the ASB case review process amongst victims and communities, ensuring that their rights and how to request a review. So that's the processes we'll go through with them. We'll talk about legislation best practice in terms of, are you working within that? Are your policy and procedure reflecting the national legislation, good practice? Is it easily accessible? So it's complying with, in terms of providing multiple ways of reporting. So it's not just an online application, but is it on the phone? Is it in person? So we'll have those discussions around how they might do that. Again, so it's continuous development as well. So regular reviews of the ASB case review. So we'll have a discussion about how they might do that. And it's a checklist form that they'll go through with us. Get talking, how do they engage victims, throughout the process, keeping them informed in terms of involved in the problem solving process, empowering how do you empower empowerment, prioritize the victim, but also empowering agencies around the table as well, and active listening. Again, so by signing the pledge, you'll get a certificate, saying that, you've met the pledge requirements, and we're happy to come down and present the pledge, and basically it just goes to show that you're addressing any inconsistencies that they may be or may not have been. Cases agencies might come through and you may meet the pledge requirements straight away, and sometimes there's work to be done, and that allows the agencies to really go away to look at the processes, speak to the governance processes that they have, and then come back to us. We're always there to support them throughout that process. And we'll work with each agency in terms of their requirements. And sometimes agencies have said, we haven't quite got that right, but we're working towards it. So as long as they can provide an action plan of how they are working towards it, then it's a straightforward process. And I think when I looked at it when I was on the other side in terms of local authority, what it does is it really makes you ask those questions, really review your current processes and procedures, and ultimately, I think that when you've gone through that process, your processes and procedures will, work towards best practice.
Yeah, I love it. As I say, having been through it myself, it was a great process to go through. It gets you questioning what you're doing, and then then when you're moving forward that you've got a good, robust process in place that. We've got your back as well, because you've looked at it and you've given us the confidence then to deliver a really good review.
Absolutely.
So I absolutely love that. If a practitioner's kind of listening and wants to just reach out to your contact on the ASB Help website.
Yep, that's right. Absolutely. Come through to us. There's a form that you can fill in, and we'll endeavour to come back to you, and then we can follow through those discussions.
Yeah, and then if you're a victim that's obviously listening to this today or involved in, and you've got some issues with antisocial behaviour, is there a process within your website as well where they can kind of raise issues?
Absolutely, there is a victim a form on the web. Yeah, absolutely. Get your name, your address, what you're experiencing, and we will get back in touch with you and have a conversation with you and see what the best steps are to help you address the antisocial behaviour.
Is it asbhelp.co.uk? Is it? Or
yes,
is it
it is.
It is. Brilliant. So asbhelp.co.uk.
UK. Yeah.
.uk.
UK. Yeah. Yeah. UK.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thanks, Harvey. That's been a brilliant session. I can't thank you enough for your time this morning.
No, thank you for inviting me.
No, you're welcome. And thanks to all our listeners as well for listening to this first RHE Global podcast. Thank you for listening. I hope you found that useful, and we will catch you on the next episode.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.